The Valorian Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They had conquered 462 species. Some of those species had welcomed them, most had not. It made no difference to the Dominion. They came. They demanded submission. They received it, one way or another. Grand Admiral Thixus stood on the command bridge of the Eternal Mandate and watched the stars blur past the viewport. The ship was in faster-than-light travel, bending space around itself as it raced toward a small yellow star on the edge of explored territory. Behind the flagship, 400 warships followed in perfect formation. Together, they formed the Subjugation Fleet, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Thixus was proud of his fleet. He had spent 60 years rising through the ranks to command it. His scales were gray now, marked with the ceremonial scars of 100 successful campaigns. He had personally overseen the conquest of 11 species. The 12th would be easy. The species called themselves humans. They lived on the 3rd planet from their sun, a world they called Earth. Dominion scouts had observed them for nearly 2 centuries, watching and waiting and gathering information. The reports all said the same thing. Humans were primitive, dangerous to each other, yes, aggressive, warlike, but they had no faster-than-light travel. They had barely left their own world. Their largest space stations were pathetic things, less than a kilometer across. They would fall quickly. Grand Admiral. The voice came from behind him. Thixis turned to face his tactical advisor, a younger officer named Varix. We will arrive at the target system in 6 hours. Good. Status of the fleet? All ships report ready. Weapons charged. Landing forces prepared. Varix's mandibles clicked together in the Valorian expression of amusement. Though I doubt we will need them. The humans don't even have a unified government. They spend most of their time fighting each other. Thixis nodded slowly. He had read the same reports. Earth was divided into nearly 200 separate nations. They argued over resources. They killed each other over differences in belief. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times with nuclear weapons. It was remarkable they had survived long enough to reach space at all. Their division will make this simple, Thixis agreed. We will establish orbit, broadcast our demands, and wait for them to comply. If they resist, we will destroy a few of their cities. They will learn. This was the standard approach. The Dominion had perfected it over thousands of years. Most species surrendered after the first demonstration of power. The smart ones surrendered before any demonstration was needed. The Dominion's reputation preceded them. Everyone in the galaxy knew what happened to those who resisted. Thixis walked to the central command platform and sat in his chair. The bridge crew worked around him, monitoring systems and checking coordinates. The Eternal Mandate was 3 kilometers long, the largest warship ever built. It carried enough firepower to crack a small moon. Its shields could withstand bombardment from an entire planetary defense grid. It was a symbol of Dominion power, designed to inspire terror in any who saw it. And it was just one ship among 400. The hours passed slowly. Thixis reviewed intelligence reports on humanity while he waited. He studied their history, their wars, their technology. It was all very standard. The humans had followed the same path as most carbon-based intelligent species. They had evolved. They had developed tools. They had built civilizations that rose and fell. They had discovered science and industry. They had reached for the stars, but they had reached slowly, too slowly. Without faster-than-light travel, they were trapped in their single system. They had sent probes to other stars, but those probes would take centuries to arrive. They had dreamed of colonies on other worlds, but those dreams remained dreams. Earth was their only home. That made them vulnerable. Translation in 5 minutes, the navigation officer announced. Thixis straightened in his chair. Around him, the bridge crew prepared for arrival. This was always the most important moment of any conquest. The first impression mattered. The subjugated species needed to see the Dominion's power immediately. They needed to understand that resistance was pointless. All ships, prepare for translation. Thixis commanded. Standard formation. We will emerge beyond the 8th planet and proceed inward. I want full sensor sweeps of the entire system. Confirmations came from across the fleet. 400 ships, ready to demonstrate the might of the greatest empire in galactic history. The countdown reached 0. Reality twisted around the eternal mandate as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Stars stopped blurring and became fixed points of light. The darkness of normal space surrounded them. And then the sensors went active. At first, everything matched the intelligence reports. The system contained 8 major planets orbiting the yellow star. The third planet showed clear signs of civilization. Radio waves filled the spectrum, broadcasting entertainment and communications and all the noise of a technological species. Orbital stations circled Earth, small and fragile-looking. The humans had spread through their system. There were habitats around their fourth planet, a red world they called Mars. There were mining operations in the asteroid belt. There were research stations around the gas giants. All of it was primitive by Dominion standards, but impressive for a species without FTL travel. Thixus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be a worthy addition to the Dominion. The humans would make good workers. Their aggressive nature could be channeled into useful labor. Their divided governments would be replaced with proper Dominion administration. In a few generations, they would forget they had ever been free. Grand Admiral. A junior officer's voice broke through his thoughts. There was something wrong with that voice. It was trembling. We are detecting an anomaly. Explain. There is a vessel moving from the fourth planet. It is on an intercept course. Thixus frowned. The intelligence reports had mentioned no military vessels of any significance. The humans had a few armed ships, but nothing that could threaten even the smallest Dominion warship. Size? The junior officer did not answer immediately. His claws moved across his control panel, checking and rechecking his readings. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The sensors must be malfunctioning, Grand Admiral. The readings do not make sense. Report the readings, Thixus commanded. His voice was sharp now. He did not tolerate uncertainty from his officers. 400 kilometers, sir. Silence fell across the bridge. Every officer stopped working. Every eye turned toward the junior officer's station. 400 kilometers. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. That is impossible, Varric said. No species builds vessels of that scale. The resource cost alone would bankrupt a dozen star systems. The engineering challenges are insurmountable. Thixus rose from his chair and walked to the sensor station. He looked at the readings himself. The numbers were clear. They were also impossible. Recalibrate the sensors, he ordered. Run a full diagnostic. There must be an error. The junior officer obeyed. Minutes passed. The diagnostic completed. The readings remained unchanged. 400 kilometers. Request optical confirmation, Thixus said. His voice was steady, but something cold was growing in his chest. Fear. He had not felt fear in decades. Show me this vessel. The main view screen flickered. Long-range optical sensors focused on a point of light moving slowly against the stars. The image zoomed in, enhanced, clarified, and Grand Admiral Thixus, conqueror of 11 species, veteran of 100 campaigns, felt his heart stop. It was real. The human vessel looked like nothing in the Dominion's archives. It was not sleek or elegant. It was not designed to inspire awe. It was brutal, industrial, ugly, a mountain of metal and machinery, stretching across the void like a small moon that had learned to move. Sections of the vessel were open to space, exposed frameworks of scaffolding and equipment. Massive arms extended from its core, arms that looked capable of grasping asteroids. Structures covered its surface like a mechanical forest. Lights blinked across its hull in patterns that suggested millions of individual habitats and work areas. It was not a warship. Thixus could see that immediately. It was something else, something that had no equivalent in Dominion thinking. A city, a factory, a world unto itself, and it was moving toward them. Get me more information, Thixus ordered. What is that thing? Why do we have no records of it? His intelligence officer was already working frantically. Our observations focused on the third planet, Grand Admiral. We knew the humans had expanded through their system, but we did not prioritize surveying their outer installations. We assumed they were mining platforms, research stations. Nothing of significance. Nothing of significance, Varric repeated. His voice was hollow. That thing is larger than most inhabited moons. The intelligence officer found something. His scales went pale. I am receiving a data packet from the vessel. They are broadcasting their specifications. Openly. They want us to know what we are looking at. Show me. The information appeared on the main screen. Thixis read it in growing disbelief. The vessel was designated UNSS Prometheus. The letters stood for United Nations Spaceship, suggesting it belonged to some coalition of human governments. It was classified as a mobile shipyard, mining platform, and colony vessel. It contained habitation space for 2.3 million humans. It had been under construction for 40 years, and then Thixis read the final line of the specifications, and the cold fear in his chest became ice. The smaller of the two, he read aloud. This is the smaller of the two. No one on the bridge spoke. No one moved. They all understood what they were seeing. The humans had built this impossible thing while trapped in a single star system. They had built it without faster-than-light travel. They had built it without access to the vast resources of the galaxy, and they had built an even larger one. Grand Admiral, the communications officer said, "We are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. They are hailing us." Thixis wanted to refuse. He wanted to order his fleet to turn around and retreat, but 400 warships were watching. The honor of the Dominion was at stake. He could not show weakness. Not yet. Accept the transmission. The view screen changed. A human face appeared, replacing the image of the impossible vessel. It was a female of their species. Thixis judged, though he was not certain. She had gray-streaked hair and calm eyes and a thin smile that suggested she was not at all surprised to see them. "Valorian Dominion Subjugation Fleet," she said. Her voice was steady and unhurried. "I am Director Chen, Administrator of the Prometheus. Welcome to Sol System. We have been expecting you." Thixis forced his voice to remain steady. "You have been expecting us? For approximately 80 years. We detected your observation probes when they first arrived. We have been preparing ever since." The thin smile widened slightly. "Did you think we would not notice? Your probes were quite obvious to anyone paying attention. 80 years. The humans had known about the Dominion for 80 years. They had known someone was watching them. And they had responded by building vessels that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. I notice you did not attempt to destroy our probes," Thixis said, "or to hide your activities from our observation." "No," Director Chen agreed. "We did not." "Why?" "Because we wanted you to underestimate us. We wanted you to see a divided species fighting among itself. We wanted you to see primitive technology and small stations. We wanted you to bring your fleet here, confident in your superiority." Her eyes hardened. "And you have." Thixis felt his claws tighten on the armrests of his chair. This was not how conquests were supposed to proceed. The subjugated species were supposed to be terrified. They were supposed to beg for mercy. They were not supposed to smile and speak of traps. "You speak as though you have us at a disadvantage," Thixis said. "My fleet carries enough firepower to destroy your entire civilization. Your vessel, impressive as it is, cannot change that equation. Can it not?" Director Chen tilted her head slightly. "Grand Admiral, the Prometheus is not a warship. It is a shipyard. A factory. It builds things." She paused. "Would you like to see what it has built?" Before Thixis could respond, the view screen split. New images appeared alongside Director Chen's face. Ships, human ships, hundreds of them, launching from the vast bays of the Prometheus. They were smaller than the mother vessel, of course, but that meant nothing. The smallest of them was still 5 kilometers long, and there were so many of them. "These are our defense platforms," Director Chen explained, "designed specifically for encounters like this one. Each one carries weapons capable of engaging vessels of your fleet's class. We have deployed 1,200 of them around the Prometheus. Another 800 are launching from installations elsewhere in the system. 2,000 ships, each one larger than the Eternal Mandate, each one bristling with weapons." Thixis looked at his tactical officer. Varix was staring at his console, running calculations. When he looked up, his expression told Thixis everything he needed to know. They were outgunned. Massively, impossibly outgunned. "You have made a mistake," Director Chen said. Her voice was gentle now, almost kind. "You assumed that because we could not reach the stars, we were weak. You assumed that because we fought among ourselves, we could not cooperate. You assumed that our technology was primitive because it did not match your own." She shook her head slowly. "We have spent a century building for this moment. We have poured the resources of our entire civilization into preparation. We did not know what we would find in the galaxy. We did not know if we would find friends or enemies. But we knew we would find something. She leaned forward, and her eyes met Thixis's through the screen. So we prepared for the worst. Thixis said nothing. There was nothing to say. His fleet, the pride of the Valorian Dominion, had flown into a trap that had been waiting for them for 80 years, and the species that had set that trap was looking at him with calm, patient eyes. "What do you want?" Thixis finally asked. Director Chen smiled again. This time, the smile reached her eyes. "Now we can talk." Grand Admiral Thixis stared at the view screen long after Director Chen's image disappeared. The human had ended the transmission with a simple message. She would give him time to consult with his superiors. She would wait for his decision. She was in no hurry. That last part was what terrified him most. The Prometheus hung in space before his fleet, surrounded by its swarm of defense platforms. The human vessels had not attacked. They had not even powered weapons. They simply waited, patient and silent, like a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. "Grand Admiral." Varex's voice was quiet. "What are your orders?" Thixis did not answer immediately. He was trying to understand what had happened. For 12,000 years, the Dominion had conquered without serious opposition. Their technology was superior. Their numbers were overwhelming. Their strategy was perfected through hundreds of campaigns. No species had ever presented a real threat. And now this. "Get me a full analysis," Thixis said. "I want to know everything about those human vessels. Capabilities, weapons, power signatures, everything." His officers went to work. Thixis walked slowly to the observation window and looked out at the Prometheus. Even from this distance, it dominated the view. It was too big, too impossible. His mind kept trying to reject what his eyes were seeing. How had they built it? The Dominion had studied economics and engineering and resource management across thousands of star systems. They knew the limits of what was possible. A vessel of 3 kilometers required the industrial output of an entire planet. A vessel of 10 kilometers required the resources of a star system. A vessel of 100 kilometers would require resources from dozens of systems, coordinated over centuries. A vessel of 400 kilometers should not exist. "Grand Admiral." The intelligence officer approached, holding a datapad. "I have compiled what information we can gather from sensor readings and the data the humans transmitted. Report. The Prometheus is not a single construction. It appears to be modular. The humans built it in sections over 40 years, adding new components as they were completed. The central core was the first section. Each additional module expanded its capabilities." The officer paused, checking his notes. "It contains manufacturing facilities capable of processing raw asteroids into finished components. It has refineries, shipyards, agricultural sections that grow food for its population. It is entirely self-sufficient. A mobile civilization," Thixis murmured. "Yes, Grand Admiral. The humans did not build a ship. They built a world that can travel between the stars." The officer's voice dropped. If they had faster-than-light technology, they could expand indefinitely. They would not need planets. They would not need to conquer territory. They could simply build more vessels and go wherever they wished. Thixis closed his eyes. The implications were staggering. Every other species the Dominion had encountered thought in terms of planets. They conquered worlds. They defended systems. They built empires based on territory. The humans thought differently. They did not need territory. They carried their civilization with them. Given enough time and resources, they could fill the galaxy with vessels like the Prometheus. Each one would be a nation. Each one would be self-sufficient. Each one would be capable of building more. "The defense platforms," Thixis said. "Tell me about them." 5 kilometers in length, on average. Each one carries approximately the same firepower as 15 of our standard destroyers. They appear to be designed for fleet combat. The officer hesitated. "Grand Admiral, they are not elegant. Their weapons are crude by our standards. Their shields are basic. Their armor is simple metal alloys rather than advanced composites. And yet they have so many of them. The humans compensated for inferior technology with superior numbers. Each individual platform is weaker than one of our warships, but there are 2,000 of them." The officer looked up from his datapad. "We are outnumbered 5-1, and each of their ships is larger than ours." Varex joined them at the observation window. His expression was troubled. "How did they do this without us knowing? We watched them for nearly 2 centuries. We watched their home planet," the intelligence officer said. We watched their cities and their wars and their social development. We did not pay close attention to their outer system activities. We assumed those were minor operations. Mining, research, nothing important. Nothing important, Thixis repeated. The words tasted bitter. He turned away from the window and walked back to his command chair. His mind was working through possibilities, options, strategies. He had not survived 60 years of military service by giving up when situations turned difficult. Contact the High Command, he ordered. I need to speak with the Council directly. The communications took time. Faster than light messages still required relay stations, and the nearest was several light years away. While they waited, Thixis studied everything his officers could tell him about humanity. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Humans had reached their first moon in the year they called 1969. It was a remarkable achievement for a species that had only invented powered flight 66 years earlier. But then something strange happened. They stopped, they planted flags and collected rocks, and then they went home. For decades, they did nothing more than orbit their own planet. It seemed like a failure. The intelligence analysts had assumed humans lacked ambition, lacked drive. They had reached the stars and then turned back. But that was not what happened. The humans had been preparing. They spent those decades developing new technologies, better rockets, improved life support, advanced manufacturing techniques. They were not retreating. They were building foundations, and then they started building again. Space stations grew larger. Permanent settlements appeared on their moon. They established colonies on Mars. They sent mining ships to the asteroid belt. Each project was bigger than the last. Each one pushed the limits of what they could achieve. The Prometheus was simply the largest step in a long journey. They never stopped, Varric said. He had been reading the same reports. They never reached a point and decided it was enough. They just kept building. Every other species we have conquered was satisfied with their achievements, the intelligence officer added. They built what they needed and stopped. The Trixians were content with orbital habitats. The Valorians themselves stopped expanding after we controlled sufficient territory. But humans, he shook his head. They seem to believe that building more is always better. Thixis thought about this. In Dominion philosophy, efficiency was the highest virtue. You built what you needed. You used resources wisely. You did not waste effort on excessive construction. Humans had a different philosophy. They built not because they needed to, but because they could. They saw empty space and wanted to fill it. They saw raw materials and wanted to transform them. They saw limits and wanted to exceed them. It was madness. Glorious, terrifying madness. The communication link to High Command finally connected. Thixis found himself facing the Dominion Council, the 7 individuals who ruled the Empire. They listened in silence as he described what he had found. This is not possible, Councillor Vex said when Thixis finished. She was the oldest member of the council, ancient even by Valorian standards. Our engineers have studied the theoretical limits of vessel construction. 400 kilometers exceeds all known parameters. I am transmitting sensor data now, Thixis replied. You can verify for yourselves. The data transfer took several minutes. Thixis watched the council members review the information. One by one, their expressions changed from disbelief to shock, to something approaching fear. How? Councillor Vex demanded. How did they build this? They had time, Thixis said. They had motivation. And they had a different approach to construction than any species we have encountered. He paused, organizing his thoughts. Most civilizations build ships in specialized facilities. A shipyard produces ships. A factory produces components. A refinery produces materials. Each step is separate. This is efficient, another counselor said. Yes, but the humans combined everything. The Prometheus is not just a ship. It is a shipyard that can move. It travels to asteroid fields and consumes raw materials directly. It processes those materials into components. It assembles those components into new ships and new modules for itself. It does not need external support. A self-replicating system, Councillor Vex said slowly. They built a machine that can build more machines. Exactly. Given sufficient raw materials, the Prometheus could construct a copy of itself in approximately 50 years. That copy could construct another copy. Each generation would double their capacity. Thixis let the implications sink in. If they acquire faster than light technology, they will not be limited by the resources of a single system. They could spread across the galaxy, consuming asteroids and building more vessels wherever they go. The council was silent. Thixis could see them running calculations in their heads. The numbers were not favorable. What do they want? Counselor Vex asked finally. They have not made specific demands yet. The human representative suggested she would give us time to consider our position. Thixis hesitated. I believe they want our FTL technology. We cannot give them that, another counselor said immediately. If they have FTL capability combined with their industrial capacity, they would become unstoppable. If we do not give them that, Thixis replied, they may take it. My fleet is surrounded. We cannot fight our way free. And even if we could, they would capture at least one of our ships. They would study it. They would learn our technology. He spread his hands. The outcome is the same, counselors. The only difference is whether they obtain FTL technology through negotiation or through force. The council debated for a long time. Thixis listened but did not participate. His role was military, not political. His job was to report the situation accurately. The decision belonged to others. In the end, the council reached the only conclusion they could. Negotiate, Counselor Vex said. Her voice was heavy with resignation. Find out what they want. Give them what we must, but try to limit the damage. Try to contain them somehow. Thixis nodded. He did not believe containment was possible, but he did not say so. Some truths were too painful to speak aloud. I will contact them immediately, he said. The communication link closed. Thixis sat alone on his bridge, surrounded by his officers, watching the impossible human vessel through the observation window. He had spent his entire career conquering others. He had never imagined being on the other side of that equation. He had never imagined meeting a species that made the Dominion look small. Now he had to negotiate with them. He activated his communication system and requested a channel to the Prometheus. The response came almost immediately, as if they had been waiting for him. Director Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked exactly as she had before, calm and patient and faintly amused. Grand Admiral, she said, have you made your decision? I have been authorized to negotiate. Thixis replied. The Dominion is prepared to discuss terms. Excellent. Director Chen smiled. Then let us discuss the future of your empire. Thixis felt a chill run down his spine. He had commanded fleets. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed rebellions and destroyed civilizations. None of that had prepared him for this conversation. What do you want? He asked. Director Chen's smile widened. Everything, she said. But we will start small. First, I want you to understand something. Something important. Something that will determine how this conversation proceeds. Go on. Your intelligence reports described us as primitive, divided, weak. They were not entirely wrong. Director Chen leaned forward. We are divided. We fight among ourselves. We have nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. We are aggressive and short-sighted and often foolish. This does not sound like a negotiating position, Thixis observed. It is an explanation, Director Chen replied. You need to understand what you are dealing with. We are all of those things. Primitive, divided, aggressive, but we are also something else. Her eyes locked with his through the screen. We are builders. We have always been builders. From the first moment our ancestors stacked stones into walls, we have been driven to construct, to create, to make things that did not exist before. She gestured toward something off-screen, and the view shifted to show the Prometheus in all its impossible glory. We built that in 40 years, Admiral. 40 years, using the resources of a single star system, without faster-than-light travel, while fighting among ourselves the entire time. Imagine what we will build when we have access to the galaxy. Thixis did not respond. He was imagining it. He could not stop imagining it. Now, Director Chen said, her voice becoming businesslike, let us discuss terms. The negotiations took place aboard a neutral vessel, a small transport that humans had modified specifically for this purpose. Grand Admiral Thixis arrived with a delegation of 3 advisors. Director Chen brought her own team. They met in a conference room that looked out on both fleets, human and Dominion, hanging in the void like opposing armies frozen in time. Thixis studied the human delegation carefully. Besides Director Chen, there was a military officer in a uniform covered with medals. There was a scientist with tired eyes and nervous hands. And there was a young man who said nothing but watched everything. his expression unreadable. Before we begin, Director Chen said, I want to establish something clearly. We are not your enemies. Thixis raised what would have been an eyebrow if his species had possessed such features. You have surrounded my fleet with 2,000 warships. That seems rather hostile. Defensive, Director Chen corrected. You came here to conquer us. We defended ourselves. There is a difference. She placed her hands flat on the conference table. We have no desire to destroy your fleet or start a war with your empire. We want something much more valuable than destruction. And what is that? Trade, knowledge, partnership. Director Chen smiled slightly. We have spent a century preparing for first contact with alien life. We did not know if we would find friends or enemies. We prepared for enemies because that was safer, but we hoped for friends. Thixis considered this. It was not what he had expected. The humans had overwhelming force. They could have demanded anything. Instead, they were talking about partnership. You will forgive me if I am skeptical, he said. Civilizations that build weapons do not usually want peace. We build everything, Director Chen replied. Weapons are just one category. We also build hospitals, universities, farms, power plants, research stations. We build art and music and stories. We build relationships and communities and dreams. She gestured toward the window, toward the massive shape of the Prometheus visible in the distance. That is not a weapon, Admiral. It is a city. It is a factory. It is a home for millions of our people. We built it because we could not stop building. Not because we wanted to threaten anyone. The military officer spoke up. His name was General Morrison, and his voice was deep and gravelly. Make no mistake, Admiral. We can fight. We will fight if we must. But Director Chen speaks the truth. We would rather trade than conquer. Your species has quite a history of conquest, Thixis observed. Your own planet shows the scars of countless wars. Yes, Director Chen agreed. We do not hide from our history. We have been brutal. We have been cruel. We have done terrible things to each other and to our world. She paused. But we have also learned. We have grown. We looked up at the stars and realized that our petty conflicts were meaningless compared to what waited out there. It took us a long time to understand that lesson. Some of us still do not understand it, but enough of us do. Thixis leaned back in his chair. He was beginning to understand something about humanity. They were not unified, not in the way the Dominion was unified. They were a species in constant conflict with themselves, different factions, different philosophies, different visions of the future. And yet they had built the Prometheus together. How did you convince your governments to cooperate? He asked. Your species is divided into nearly 200 nations. Building something like the Prometheus would require resources from all of them. Director Chen exchanged a glance with her team. The scientist, a woman named Dr. Patel, answered the question. Fear, she said simply. When we detected your observation probes, we knew we were not alone. We knew something was watching us. We did not know if you were friendly or hostile. We had to prepare for the worst. She pushed her glasses up her nose. Fear is a powerful motivator. Our nations had spent decades threatening each other with nuclear weapons. When we found evidence of alien intelligence, we realized our weapons were pointed in the wrong direction. So you built new weapons, Thixis said. We built everything, Doctor, Patel corrected. Weapons, yes, but also infrastructure, industries, transportation networks, educational systems. We did not just prepare for war, we prepared for whatever came next. She smiled slightly. In a way, your probes were the best thing that ever happened to humanity. They gave us a common enemy to prepare for. They forced us to cooperate. And now that your common enemy has arrived, now we would like to make peace with them, Director Chen said. If they are willing. Thixis thought about this for a long moment. The Dominion had never made peace with a species they intended to conquer. They had never needed to. Their power was absolute. Their demands were non-negotiable. Submit or die was the only choice they offered. But the humans had changed the equation. What exactly do you want? Thixis asked. Director Chen pulled out a datapad and slid it across the table. Our initial requests are simple. First, we want your faster-than-light technology, complete specifications, manufacturing processes, everything. We will not reverse engineer it from captured ships. We would prefer to receive it as a gift, freely given. That technology is the foundation of our empire, Thixis said. Without FTL superiority, we cannot maintain control over our territory. I understand. That brings me to our second request. Director Chen met his eyes. We want star charts. Complete maps of Dominion space and all known territories. The locations of inhabited worlds, space stations, trade routes. Everything you have. Thixis felt a cold knot form in his stomach. You want to know where to find us. We want to know where to find everyone. The Dominion. The species you have conquered. The regions of space you have not yet claimed. Director Chen's voice was calm, but firm. We will not stay contained in our single system, Admiral. With or without your help, we will expand into the galaxy. The only question is whether we do so as your partners or your competitors. Partners, Thixis repeated. The word felt strange in his mouth. You speak of partnership, but you are essentially demanding tribute. You want us to give you our greatest advantages for nothing in return. Not for nothing. Director Chen leaned forward. In return, we offer you access to our industrial capabilities. The Prometheus can produce goods and materials at a rate your shipyards cannot match. We can build stations, habitats, ships, anything you need. We can construct infrastructure that would take your civilization centuries to develop, General Morrison added. We also offer military alliance. You have enemies, Admiral. Every empire does. We are willing to defend Dominion territory against external threats. Our ships may be crude by your standards, but they are effective, and we can build many, many more of them. Thixis considered the offer. It was surprisingly reasonable. The humans were not demanding conquest or destruction. They were offering trade, exchange, mutual benefit, but there was something beneath the surface, something that troubled him. You speak as equals, he said slowly. But you know as well as I do that if we refuse your terms, you can simply take what you want. Why negotiate at all? Director Chen smiled. It was a warm smile, genuine and almost friendly. Because negotiation is better than war. Because cooperation produces more than conflict. Because we have spent our entire history learning that lesson the hard way. Through blood and fire and suffering. She paused. We do not want to conquer your empire, Admiral. We want to join it. Or rather, we want to invite you to join us. Join you in what? In building. Director Chen's eyes lit up with something that looked almost like passion. The galaxy is enormous. It is full of resources, full of possibilities, full of wonders we have not yet discovered. We could spend 1,000,000 years exploring and building and creating, and we would never run out of new things to do. She spread her hands. Why fight over territory when there is so much territory that no one has claimed? Why compete for resources when resources are effectively infinite? Why destroy when we could create? Thixis had no answer for this. His entire worldview was based on competition, limited resources, struggle for survival. The strong conquered the weak, because that was the natural order. But the humans were suggesting something different. They were suggesting that the natural order could be changed. That building was better than fighting, that there was enough for everyone. If only they were willing to work together. It was either the most naive philosophy Thixis had ever heard, or the most revolutionary. I need to consult with my superiors, he said finally. Your proposals are unprecedented. They will require careful consideration. Of course. Director Chen nodded. Take all the time you need. We have waited a century for this moment. We can wait a little longer. Thixis rose from his chair. His delegation followed. As they walked toward the door, the young man who had remained silent throughout the meeting spoke for the first time. Admiral, Thixis turned. The young man was looking at him with an expression that was impossible to read. My name is James Wong. I am a historian. I study human civilizations, their rises and falls, their triumphs and tragedies. He paused. I want you to understand something that Director Chen was too polite to say directly. And what is that? We are offering you a good deal because we want this to end peacefully. But make no mistake, James Wong's voice was quiet but carried clearly across the room. If you refuse, we will not simply accept your refusal. We will take what we need. We will expand into the galaxy whether you permit it or not. We will build our ships and our stations and our civilizations, and anyone who tries to stop us will be removed as an obstacle. Is that a threat? Thixis asked. It is a statement of fact. James Wong did not blink. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and near-extinction events. We have fought among ourselves for thousands of years. We have done terrible things and survived terrible things. We are not a peaceful species by nature. We are a stubborn species, a relentless species, a species that does not know how to give up. He stepped closer to Thixus, and suddenly the Admiral felt something he had not felt in decades. Not fear, exactly. Something older, more primal. The instinct of prey recognizing a predator. Director Chen is offering you partnership because she believes in cooperation. General Morrison is offering you alliance because he is a soldier who respects strength. Dr. Patel is offering you knowledge because she is a scientist who values understanding. James Wong smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. I am offering you a warning. Take the deal. Do not make us your enemies, because we have spent our entire existence fighting, and we are very, very good at it. Thixus said nothing. He turned and walked out of the conference room, his delegation following in silence. Behind him, he heard Director Chen's voice, sharp with disapproval. James, that was unnecessary. He needed to hear it. James Wong replied. They all need to understand what they are dealing with. Thixus did not look back, but the young historian's words followed him all the way back to his ship, echoing in his mind like a prophecy of things to come. The humans were offering peace. They were offering partnership. They were offering a future where both species could prosper together. But beneath that offer was something else. Something that the Dominion had never encountered in 12,000 years of conquest. A species that was not afraid. A species that had looked at the most powerful empire in the galaxy and calculated that they could win if it came to war. A species that was offering friendship, yes, but also making very clear what would happen if that friendship was refused. Thixus returned to the Eternal Mandate and locked himself in his quarters. He needed to think. He needed to decide what to recommend to the Council. But even as he considered his options, he knew that the decision had already been made. Not by him, not by the Council, not by the Dominion at all. The humans had made the decision for them, 80 years ago, when they detected those first observation probes and started building their impossible ships. Everything since then had been inevitable. The Dominion Council convened an emergency session for the third time in a week. This was unprecedented. The Council normally met once per cycle, and even then, most decisions were routine. The Empire ran itself through bureaucracy and tradition. The Council existed mainly to handle crises. This was definitely a crisis. Grand Admiral Thixus stood before the 7 counselors and delivered his recommendation. He kept his voice steady, professional, detached. Inside, he felt like the foundations of his world were crumbling. The humans have made their position clear, he said. They want faster-than-light technology. They want star charts. They want to expand into the galaxy. In exchange, they offer industrial partnership and military alliance. He paused. I recommend we accept their terms. Counselor Vex leaned forward. Her ancient eyes were sharp despite her age. You recommend surrender. I recommend survival. Thixus corrected. There is a difference. Is there? Another counselor, a younger male named Thraxus, spoke with barely concealed contempt. For 12,000 years, the Dominion has never bowed to another species. We are the masters of this region of space. We do not negotiate from weakness. We have never faced a species like this one, Thixus replied. The humans are different. They think differently. They build differently. They fight differently. He activated a holographic display, showing the Prometheus in all its impossible detail. This vessel was constructed by a species without FTL travel. They built it using the resources of a single star system. They built it while fighting among themselves. They built it in 40 years. The image shifted, showing projections and calculations. If we give them FTL technology, they will be able to access resources from multiple systems, based on their current industrial capacity and expansion rate. Our analysts project they will construct 10 vessels of this size within 5 years, 50 within a decade. Within a century, they will control more territory than the entire Dominion. Then we should destroy them now, Thraxus said. Before they become unstoppable, we cannot destroy them. Thixus let the words hang in the air. My fleet is surrounded. 2,000 human warships have us trapped. Even if we could fight our way free, it would require sacrificing most of our forces. And for what? The humans would survive. They would capture our technology from the wreckage. They would rebuild. They would expand, and they would remember that we tried to destroy them. He turned to face the full council directly. If we attack them now, we create an enemy that will never forgive us. An enemy that builds weapons as easily as we build furniture. An enemy that will spend the next 1,000 years hunting us down and destroying everything we have created. His voice dropped. I have studied their history, counselors. When humans decide something is their enemy, they do not stop fighting until that enemy is utterly destroyed. They are relentless, patient, implacable. Counselor Vex nodded slowly. She had lived longer than any other member of the council. She had seen species rise and fall. She understood survival better than anyone. What guarantee do we have that they will honor their agreement? She asked. If they become powerful enough, what prevents them from turning on us? Nothing, Thixus admitted. But consider the alternative. If we refuse their offer, they take what they want by force. If we attack them, they destroy us. If we give them what they want peacefully, we at least have a chance of building a real partnership. He spread his hands. The humans claim they want cooperation. They say they prefer building to fighting. Perhaps they are lying. Perhaps they will betray us eventually. But right now, in this moment, accepting their offer is our only viable option. The council debated for hours. Arguments went back and forth. Some counselors favored defiance, preferring to die fighting rather than submit. Others agreed with Thixus that survival was worth any price. Still others proposed elaborate schemes to trick the humans, to give them flawed technology or false maps. Counselor Vex listened to all of it without speaking. When the arguments finally exhausted themselves, she raised her hand for silence. I have ruled this empire for 300 years, she said. I have overseen the conquest of dozens of species. I have made decisions that cost millions of lives and shaped the destiny of entire civilizations. She paused. And I tell you now that Grand Admiral Thixus is correct. We must accept the human terms. Counselor, Thraxus began. Silence. Vex's voice cracked like a whip. You speak of pride and honor and tradition. These things have value. But they have no value if we are dead. The Dominion exists to serve our species. If the Dominion falls, our species falls with it. I will not sacrifice our people for the sake of pride. She rose from her seat, standing tall despite her age. We will give the humans what they want. We will share our technology and our knowledge. We will welcome them as partners in our empire. Her eyes swept across the council chamber. And we will hope, for all our sakes, that they mean what they say about preferring cooperation to conquest. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The council authorized Thixus to accept the human terms. He transmitted the decision to Director Chen within the hour. The human's response was simple and direct. Thank you, Admiral. You have made a wise choice. We look forward to a long and productive partnership. The subjugation fleet departed Sol System 3 days later. They carried with them a human delegation, technical experts who would help integrate human and Dominion technology. They also carried a promise. The first human FTL vessel would arrive in Dominion space within 6 months. Thixus spent those 6 months preparing for the arrival. He organized welcoming ceremonies. He arranged meetings with industrial leaders and military commanders. He tried to convince his own people that the humans were partners, not conquerors. It was difficult. The Dominion had never accepted equals. They had always been the strongest, the most powerful, the masters of all they surveyed. The idea that another species could match them, could possibly exceed them, was deeply troubling to many. But Thixus understood something that most of his people did not. The humans were not their enemies. Not yet. The humans were an opportunity, a chance to learn, a chance to grow, a chance to become something greater than the Dominion had ever been before. If they could adapt. The first human FTL vessel arrived exactly 6 months after the agreement was signed. It was called the UNSS Ambassador, and it was 18 kilometers long, not as large as the Prometheus, but still enormous by Dominion standards. It carried diplomats, engineers, scientists, traders, artists, a cross-section of human civilization, eager to meet their new partners in the galaxy. It also carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. The humans explained, with cheerful sincerity, that they saw no contradiction in this. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, Director Chen said when Thixus asked about the weapons. It is a human philosophy. We truly want peace. but we are not naive enough to assume we will always get it. Thixis found himself almost admiring their practicality. The Dominion had always separated military and civilian functions. Warships were warships. Trade vessels were trade vessels. The idea of combining both in a single hull was foreign to their thinking. But the humans combined everything. Their vessels were homes, factories, research stations, and weapons platforms all at once. Every ship was self-sufficient. Every ship could build more ships. Every ship was a tiny civilization in its own right. In the weeks that followed, Thixis watched the human delegation interact with Dominion citizens. The humans were curious about everything. They asked endless questions. They studied Dominion technology with intense focus. They took notes on Dominion culture, history, government. They were absorbing information at a rate that seemed almost predatory, and they were building. Even before the ambassador arrived, the humans had begun constructing facilities in Dominion space. Small platforms at first, observation posts, communication relays, mining operations in uninhabited systems. Nothing threatening, nothing that violated their agreement. But the pace of construction was alarming. Where Dominion engineers would spend years planning a single station, humans threw together functional platforms in weeks. They were not elegant. They were not efficient. They were crude assemblages of metal and machinery. But they worked, and there were so many of them. Thixis visited one of the human construction sites, an asteroid mining operation in an uninhabited system. What he saw there changed his understanding of humanity forever. The operation had been established for only 3 months. In that time, the humans had constructed a refinery capable of processing 10,000 tons of raw materials per day. They had built housing for 500 workers. They had assembled a small shipyard that was already producing mining vessels and cargo transports. How? Thixis asked the site manager, a cheerful woman named Elena Vasquez. How do you build so quickly? We don't wait for perfect, she replied. We build something that works, then improve it later. If we need a facility, we throw one together from whatever materials are available. It doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to function. She grinned. You want to see our next project? She led him to a viewing platform that looked out over the asteroid field. In the distance, construction drones swarmed around a massive framework of metal beams and support structures. That's going to be a shipyard, Elena explained. Full-scale production facility. When it's complete, it will be able to build vessels up to 50 kilometers in length. Construction time, 14 months. Thixis stared at the emerging structure. 14 months. The Dominion's largest shipyard had taken 200 years to build. This is insane, he said. Probably, Elena agreed. But it works. We've been doing things this way for centuries. Build fast, build big, improve constantly, never stop expanding. She looked at him with something like sympathy. I know it must seem strange to you. Your civilization values stability, efficiency, careful planning. Those are good things. But they're not the only good things. What else is there? Growth. Elena's eyes lit up. Possibility, ambition, the belief that tomorrow can be better than today, if you're willing to work for it. She gestured at the construction project before them. This shipyard will be obsolete within 10 years. We'll build something bigger, something better, and then we'll build something bigger than that. We never stop, Admiral. We never reach a point where we say, this is enough. We always want more. Thixis thought about her words for a long time afterward. He thought about them as he watched human construction projects spread across Dominion space. He thought about them as he saw human populations grow and multiply and establish new settlements in system after system. He thought about them as he realized that the human expansion was not slowing down. If anything, it was accelerating. 1 year after the agreement, there were 50 human vessels in Dominion space. 2 years later, there were 500. By the 3rd year, human settlements existed in over 200 systems, and their industrial output exceeded the entire Dominions. The council convened again and again, trying to understand what was happening. Some councilors wanted to restrict human expansion. Others wanted to learn from it. Still others simply watched in bewildered amazement as the small species from the edge of the galaxy transformed itself into a galactic power in less than a decade. Councilor Vex, oldest and wisest of them all, offered her assessment in private to Thixis. We made the right choice, she said. But I wonder if we understood what we were choosing. We thought we were accepting a partnership. What we actually did was open the door for something we cannot control. She looked out the window at the stars. The humans are not conquering us, Admiral. They are simply growing faster than we can keep up with. In another generation, the Dominion will be a small part of human civilization, not the other way around. Is that so bad? Thixis asked. Vex considered the question for a long moment. I do not know, she admitted. Ask me again in 100 years, if we are still here to answer. 100 years had passed since the subjugation fleet first entered Sol System. 100 years since Grand Admiral Thixis stood on the bridge of the Eternal Mandate and watched his entire understanding of the galaxy collapse. 100 years since humanity joined the stars. Thixis was dead now, of course. Even Valorians did not live forever. But his memoirs survived, required reading at every military academy, in what had once been the Dominion, and was now something far larger. Young officers studied his words, trying to understand how the most powerful empire in galactic history had been so completely transformed by a single encounter. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Human vessels filled the spaceways. Vast constructions that dwarfed anything the old Dominion had ever built. The smallest of them were 50 kilometers long. Mobile cities carrying millions of inhabitants across the void. The largest exceeded 1,000 kilometers. Artificial worlds that rivaled natural planets in their complexity and population. The Prometheus, that first impossible ship, was now a museum, a relic of simpler times. Children visited it on school trips, marveling at how small it seemed compared to modern vessels. Their great-grandparents had built it in desperation, preparing for an enemy they knew was coming. Their grandchildren built ships 10 times larger because they could, because building was what humans did. On the planet Valoria Prime, once the heart of the Dominion Empire, a ceremony was taking place. The centennial celebration marked 100 years of human-Valorian partnership. Representatives from both species gathered in the ancient council chamber, now a historical landmark, to commemorate the anniversary. The current director of the United Human Territories, a woman named Sarah Chen, stood at the podium. She was the great-granddaughter of the original director Chen who had negotiated with Thixis. The family had a tradition of service. 100 years ago, she began. 2 civilizations met in the void between stars. One had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. The other had never left its home system. By all logic, by all precedent, by all expectation, that meeting should have ended in conquest. The strong dominating the weak, the ancient subjugating the young. She paused, looking out at the audience. Humans and Valorians sat side by side. Other species were represented too. Species that had once been subjects of the Dominion and were now equal partners in something larger. That did not happen. Instead of conquest, there was negotiation. Instead of subjugation, there was partnership. Instead of the end of human civilization, there was a beginning. Director Chen smiled. Some would say the Dominion made a mistake that day. They could have destroyed us. They had the opportunity, the capability, the justification. We were primitive. We were dangerous. We were unknown. Every instinct told them to eliminate the threat while they still could. She shook her head. They did not. Counselor Vex, whose wisdom we still honor today, chose survival over pride. Grand Admiral Thixis, whose courage we still celebrate, chose peace over war. They made a choice that changed the course of galactic history. And for that, humanity will always be grateful. The audience applauded. Director Chen waited for silence before continuing. But I want to speak honestly today, not just in celebration. The partnership between our species has not always been easy. There have been conflicts, misunderstandings, moments when war seemed inevitable. The Valorian people have watched their empire transform into something they no longer recognize. The human people have struggled to maintain their identity as they spread across the stars. We are different species, with different histories, different values, different dreams. She leaned forward on the podium. And yet we are still here, still partners, still building together. Why? She let the question hang in the air. Because we learned something important in these 100 years, something that neither species fully understood when we first met. The universe is not a competition. It is not a war. It is not a struggle for dominance where only one species can win. Director Chen's voice grew stronger. The universe is big enough for everyone. There is room for the Valorian love of order and stability. There is room for the human drive to build and expand. There is room for every species, every culture, every dream. We do not have to fight over resources when resources are infinite. We do not have to compete for territory when territory is endless. We do not have to fear each other when cooperation makes us all stronger. She gestured at the assembled crowd. Look at what we have built together. Ships that carry billions of people between the stars. Stations that orbit 1,000 worlds. Industries that produce wonders our ancestors could not have imagined. We have done this not by conquering each other, but by working together, by sharing our strengths, by learning from our differences. Director Chen's expression softened. Grand Admiral Thixis wrote in his memoirs that meeting humanity was the most terrifying moment of his life. He saw our ships and our weapons and our relentless drive to build, and he thought he was looking at the end of his civilization. She smiled. He was wrong. He was looking at the beginning of something better. The ceremony continued with speeches and celebrations and festivities that lasted for days. But the real story of the centennial was not in the council chamber. It was out among the stars, where humans and Valorians and dozens of other species were building the future together. In a shipyard orbiting a distant red giant, a new vessel was taking shape. It would be the largest ever constructed, 2,000 kilometers from bow to stern. Its keel had been laid by human engineers. Its power systems were designed by Valorian scientists. Its hull incorporated technology from 17 different species, each contributing their unique expertise. The project manager was a young human named Marcus Webb. He had grown up on a vessel, born between the stars to parents who had never set foot on a planet. Space was his home. Building was his life. He could not imagine existing any other way. How does it feel? His Valorian colleague asked. Her name was Thixis III, named after the famous admiral. To build something this large? Marcus considered the question. Through the observation window, the skeleton of the new vessel stretched into the distance, a framework of metal and purpose that seemed to go on forever. It feels like a beginning, he said. Every time we finish a project, we start planning something bigger. Every time we think we've reached the limit of what's possible, we find a way to push past it. He smiled. My great-grandmother helped build the Prometheus. She thought it was the largest thing humans would ever create. She was wrong by a factor of 1,000. Does that not frighten you? Thixis III asked. The endless expansion? The constant growth? Why would it frighten me? Because it cannot continue forever. Eventually you will run out of resources. Eventually you will reach the edge of the galaxy. Eventually you will have built everything that can be built. Marcus laughed. The sound echoed through the observation deck. You know what's beyond the edge of the galaxy? Other galaxies. Millions of them. Billions. More than we could explore in 1 trillion years. His eyes shone with something that looked almost like hunger. And you know what's between the galaxies? Empty space. Dark matter. Energy we barely understand. Resources we can't even imagine. He turned to face his colleague. We will never run out of things to build. The universe is infinite. Our ambition can be infinite too. Thixis III was silent for a long moment. She had grown up in the reformed Dominion, in a culture that valued stability and order. The human drive to expand was alien to her, almost incomprehensible. And yet, she could not deny its results. The partnership had transformed her species. Valorians now lived longer, healthier lives thanks to human medical technology. They traveled faster, thanks to improved FTL drives, developed jointly by both species. They experienced art and music and stories that blended Valorian tradition with human creativity. They had changed, and many Valorians resented that change. But Thixis III did not resent it. She had read her namesake's memoirs. She understood what the original Thixis had understood at the end of his life. Change was not destruction. Change was growth. The Valorian civilization had not ended when humans joined the galaxy. It had evolved into something new, something larger, something that could not have existed before. Some things had been lost. Some things had been preserved. Some things had been transformed. That was the nature of partnership. That was the price of progress. You will build forever, she said finally. You will never stop. Never. Marcus agreed. That's who we are. That's what we do. And what happens when you have built everything? When there is nothing left to create? Marcus smiled. It was the same smile that Director Chen had shown during her speech. The same smile that humanity had worn since they first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Then we'll find something new to build. something we can't even imagine yet, something that will make everything we've done before look small and simple. He placed his hand on the observation window, fingers spread against the cold glass. The universe is full of mysteries, Thixus, full of problems we haven't solved and wonders we haven't discovered. Humanity has been building for 100,000 years, ever since the first of our ancestors picked up a rock and realized they could shape it into a tool. We're not going to stop now. Outside the window, construction drones swarmed around the framework of the new vessel. In dock after dock, in system after system, similar projects were underway. The human expansion continued, unstoppable and relentless, carrying everything it touched into an uncertain but magnificent future. On Valoria Prime, the centennial celebration was ending. The crowds were dispersing, the speeches were finished, but in the ancient council chamber, one Valorian remained. She was very old, older than anyone alive except a few humans who had received longevity treatments. Her name was Vex 12, a descendant of the great counselor who had made the decision that changed everything. She stood before a portrait of her ancestor, studying the ancient face. "You made the right choice," she said softly. "We are still here. We are still ourselves. We are changed, yes, transformed, but not destroyed." She reached out and touched the frame of the portrait. "You saved us. Not by fighting, not by conquering, by having the wisdom to recognize something greater than ourselves." She turned and walked slowly toward the exit. At the door, she paused and looked back at the empty chamber. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving us a future." Outside, the stars were shining. Somewhere among them, human vessels were moving, building, creating, exploring. The galaxy that had belonged to the Dominion for 12,000 years now belonged to something larger, something that included both species, and many others besides. Something that was still growing, still changing, still becoming whatever it would ultimately become. Counselor Vex had asked Grand Admiral Thixus to check back with her in 100 years, to see if they were still around to discuss whether accepting the human terms had been the right choice. They were still here. The choice had been right, and the building continued. In an observation deck on a vessel 2,000 kilometers long, a human and a Valorian stood side by side, watching the future take shape before them. They were partners. They were builders. They were citizens of a civilization that stretched across the stars and would not stop growing until it had transformed the very nature of existence. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not conquest, not destruction, just an endless, relentless, unstoppable drive to create. And the galaxy would never be the same.